first grade friends. Today we're going to read a nonfiction book. And remember what nonfiction means? It means it's true. That's right. So we're going to read a book that helps teach us something. And it's also a really fun nonfiction book because it has a story of a little boy who has a very special pumpkin, and he does something with that pumpkin, and he watches what happens to it. And that's what we're going to do together in our class too. So we have a pumpkin here, and that's the one we're carving. And I want to share with you I want to focus on some of the nouns in our story today, in our book about pumpkins. I have some nouns that have to do with pumpkins. Do you remember what a noun is? A noun is a person, a place, or a thing. So we have seeds, sprout, vines, stem, and skin. And those are all parts of a pumpkin. So while I'm reading the story, I want you to listen to see if you can hear any of those nouns in our book about the little boy and his pumpkin jack. Okay? Pumpkin Jack, written and illustrated by Will Hubbell. See what's happening to that pumpkin right there. I bet you're familiar with that from last Halloween. Well, here he is. His name is Tim, and he's the main character in our story, and we've talked about characters too. And look at what he's doing. He's drawing his face on the pumpkin, and that's how we start carving. When Tim carved his first pumpkin, it was fierce and funny and just perfect. A jack-o'-lantern this good deserved a name, so Tim gave it one, Jack. Long after the best trick-or-treat candy was eaten, Tim still kept Jack. At night, when a candle made Jack's face dance on the wall and filled the dark with warm pumpkin smells, Tim felt Jack was almost magic. Yet too soon the spell was broken. So this is a great realistic fiction story that has some non-fiction elements in it. And you'll hear about how a pumpkin grows as we watch what happens to Jack. This pumpkin is beginning to rot, announced Mom. It's time to throw it out. Tim knew it was useless to argue. He carried Jack to the garden, which was filled with the brown ghosts of last summer's plants. A dead garden is better than a trash can, thought Tim. Still, it made him sad to leave Jack outside and alone. Wherever, whenever, chores or play brought Tim to the garden, he looked at Jack. Every time Jack was different. He became wrinkled and his fierce smile began to look silly. There's some great juicy words in this book that describes the pumpkin. Like that word fierce and wrinkled. Those are great science words to have. Mold spread over Jack's bright orange skin. As the days turned colder, Jack grew flatter. Look at what's happening to Jack. See that gray on there? That's the mold. Mold and flatter, those are great words to describe what's happening to the pumpkin. Winter began. Soon Jack was hidden beneath the snow, and Tim forgot about him. The cold, heavy jacket days came, snowman and sliding days, indoor days, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Valentine's. When all these days had passed and the March winds melted the snow, Tim found Jack. Do you see that stem poking out? He found him. There wasn't much left, just a faded and crumpled pumpkin skin, a stem, and a few seeds. Jack's Halloween magic was a distant memory now. Tim scraped a thin blanket of earth over the last bits of his pumpkin. "Goodbye, Jack," he whispered. Faded and crumpled. That's a great way to describe what happened to the pumpkin. Did you hear those nouns in the book about pumpkins? Seeds, stem, skin. That's right, right in there. When spring turned barefoot warm, a tiny sprout appeared where Jack had been. Tim found it and guessed what it was. Do you have a guess what that sprout might be? Yeah, a new pumpkin plant. How did that sprout grow from that spot? Do you remember what was there before? You see those tiny seeds? And there's our word sprout, just like in our list of words here. In the days that followed, Tim weeded and watered and watched the sprout. Slowly and steadily the plant changed and grew. It branched and spread a web of vines over the ground, but no pumpkins appeared. He was doing all of his jobs. He was weeding and watering. How come there are no pumpkins yet? That's right, it takes a long time for pumpkins to grow. But there are those vines, those curly, thin, green vines, and there's our word vines. That's a noun, it's part of the plant. The days turned hot. Flowers opened on the plant each morning. Yellow stars that twisted shut forever in the afternoon. Still, there were no pumpkins. You think there will be pumpkins soon? We had our flower stage, I bet, like the apples. After a flower came the fruit, so maybe after a flower comes a pumpkin. Finally, Tim found a little green ball growing behind a crumpled blossom. A pumpkin! Tim let out a whoop and ran to show his mom. By August, the plant had spilled onto the lawn. Tim's favorite game became pumpkin hunting. He carefully waded among the leaves, searching for green pumpkins like hidden treasures. School began again and the days cooled. Tim had less time to visit the garden. When he did, the pumpkin plant seemed tired. There were very few new leaves, and the old tattered ones no longer hid the fat green pumpkins. Then, one October morning, Tim woke to see frost coating the garden. The frozen plant seemed changed to a pale blue glass. That's a great way to describe what was happening. After school, Tim discovered what the frost had done. The pumpkin plant's leaves were as limp as wet paper. It was dying. Tim searched among the withered leaves for the unripe pumpkins. He picked them and put them on the front porch, hoping for one more change. You notice those pumpkins have some color changing on them? They were green, but what are they becoming now? That's right, big and orange. By Halloween, the pumpkins had ripened to bright orange. There were many, for the plant had been generous. Tim was generous too. He gave away all of his pumpkins but one. And that also shows an act of kindness, doesn't it? Being generous and giving away something that belongs to you is very kind. From jack-o'-lantern to seed to pumpkin again, the circle was almost complete. Now it was time for Tim to do his part. He gave his pumpkin a face. It smiled at him in a fierce and funny way. Tim smiled too and said, "Welcome back, Jack." And there he gets to do the cycle all over again every year. So if you carve a pumpkin at home and you leave 1 or 2 seeds in the pumpkin, and you let the pumpkin rot outside, you might be surprised to see a new pumpkin sprout growing from that spot in the earth the following year. And then you can really watch the pumpkin life cycle happen. So I hope you enjoyed this story. I'm really looking forward to being a scientist with you and observing what happens to our pumpkin jack. See you soon. Bye.